Madhavan Srivastav is a skilled independent corporate lawyer and founder of Law Office of Madhavan Srivastav. With a demonstrative history of working in the legal service industry as an alumnus of a campus law center, Delhi University, Madhavan specializes in the field of business and corporate law and advisor and has over 2 decades of experience. In this session, you can expect to have the answers to the following questions. What is force majeure and frustration? How can force majeure or frustration be claimed under present COVID-19 situation? How can one defend the notice received under force majeure frustration? And what are the practical legal cases which corporate lawyers are presently handling? Over to you, Martha.
Yeah, thanks, Satyam. And before I start, my request would be just let me know if I'm audible enough to
Yeah,
be heard.
you're clear. We can hear you, Martha.
Absolutely. So that's great, Satyam. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thanks, Satyam, for this opportunity for coming online and giving me an opportunity to share my views. I will just skip the introduction part as you have done that. I'll straight away come to the topic. Now I understand that we'll also have a little bit of question and answer session, and I also understand that the majority of the audience is non-legal background. They are mostly business houses and entrepreneurs. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to keep this discussion little light and less academic and more from a practical point of view. The reason I say that is because force majeure, even for lawyers, at times it can be a complicated term and it can actually be a heavy subject. Even though I'll be talking it from a legal point of view, but I'll also be talking it from a practical point of view as to who can use force majeure, what is force majeure, how do you use a force majeure, and also on the other side, if you have received a force majeure notice, how do you defend it if you feel that that is not been sent in the right spirit? Now, let's understand purely from a layman's point of view as to what is a force majeure or frustration for that matter. We will come to the distinction later on because that distinction is purely from a legal point of view. But from a generic point of view, let's try and understand what is a force majeure purely from a layman's point of view. Now, in our daily lives, if you would notice, we are actually claiming force majeures in a sense that with many of you it would have happened that you had to go somewhere and say, for example, your flight is cancelled or delayed and you're not able to reach on time. Now, that event is a force majeure. Why? Because force majeure means it's actually a French term which means a superior force. So an event has occurred which is beyond your control, and that event has stopped you from fulfilling your obligations. Now, things like this happen in usual circumstances. There is a flood, there is a riot, there is some other kind of a partial lockdown on any account. Now, because of this, it's important to understand a little more detailed meaning in force majeure. Now, please pay attention. From a layman's point of view, there are 3 conditions which have to be satisfied to claim force majeure. And what are those 3 conditions? Now, as being a part of the business houses, in your usual contract, in your daily contract, you would have promised the other party to do something. It can either be a service contract, it can be either a manufacturing contract, it can be any contract. Now, under the contract, both the parties have certain obligations to fulfill. Now, a party has given certain obligations. Now, because of some event which has occurred, you are not able to fulfill and perform that obligation. So that is first part, that you are unable to perform your obligation. If you are still able to perform the obligation, then you cannot claim force majeure. So you are prevented from performing your obligation, A. Second, the event because of which you are prevented from performing your obligation is beyond your control. So that event also has to be beyond your control. C, you could have never anticipated occurrence of that event when you entered into the contract. These three things are important. I will repeat them again. First of all, the event which has occurred has prevented you from performing your obligations. Second, that event which has occurred is beyond your control. And third, you could have never anticipated that such an event will occur. Now, let's take an example. We will come to COVID-19 example later on. Let's take a generic example to understand. Say, for example, you are a supplier and you have to supply certain products, certain goods in any part of the country, in some part of the country. And in that part of the country, floods have come. Now, because of floods, you are not able to supply the goods on time. So in that example, let's analyze these three ingredients. First, are you prevented from performing your obligations? Yes, because the floods have come. You are not able to deliver goods to that particular area because that is flood affected area now. Second, it's beyond your control. Yes, it is beyond your control. Now, in this point, what we have seen in our experience, I mean, from a legal point of view, is that at times there are, it depends upon the language of your contract and depends upon the actual circumstances that whether it is actually beyond your control. Because what if there is an alternate available for you to deliver the goods? Then one can say that it is not beyond your control. Last, could you have anticipated that? Now, I'm talking purely from a practical point of view, which I have seen in my experience, and particularly in the case of flood, is that there was a weather report by the government saying that this area is flood prone, and during this time there will be monsoon and there will be flood. Despite that, the parties executed the contract and the supplier wanted to supply. So he could have anticipated. So these three things have to be satisfied for you to claim force majeure. Now, what is the effect of this force majeure? So you have claimed force majeure, but now what happens? What happens with force majeure is that you are prevented from performing, either you will be prevented from performing whole or part of your obligations, and whether you are prevented from performing whole or part of your obligations, that time period will either be restricted to certain months or certain days or certain weeks, or for the entire remaining term of the contract, you are unable to fulfill your contract because of the event. Now, this is something which you have to your own contract and determine. But for force majeure, this is very important for you to know as to, are you prevented from performing only for a certain time period, or is it that the whole remaining term of the contract has lapsed? And then lastly, what is the consequences of the force majeure? The consequences can be, if you are the affected party and you want to claim force majeure in your favor, and we will talk about it later on in detail as do you want to claim force majeure. The consequences can be that you can either seek suspension of your obligations for the interim time period. Please note, it is suspension of your obligations. It is not termination of the contract. So for the time period, you can say that I want to suspend my obligations because I am unable to do my, I am unable to perform my obligations. Or you may also seek termination of the contract because you say that the event has occurred because of which I am not able to fulfill my obligations. And even in the remaining time period, I will not be able to fulfill. So I want to terminate and I want to exit from the contract. And then you will be able to defend whatever claims, if at all, other party has to raise up. Now, all of this will come, and I'll keep on repeating this time to time, is that all of this depends on your contract, on the language of your contract. There is no, in law, there is no straitjacket formula that this is force majeure and this is not. It purely depends upon case to case basis. Now, in light of that, let's understand what is happening. Now, this COVID-19 situation is completely unprecedented. All of us are aware that this is now being compared with like Second World War situation. So none of the force majeure clauses which you have in your contract currently were drafted keeping in mind such a situation, because nobody could anticipate that there will be a situation wherein the entire world is under a lockdown. So it's very difficult to give a view or to give an opinion as to what's going to happen in certain circumstances. It entirely depends upon the judiciary, how they are going to interpret a particular situation from the other situation. But one thing is very clear is that this COVID-19 situation is definitely a force majeure because the governments are recognizing it. Now, how one can use it will depend upon the language of your contract. In light of that, it is very, very important for you to distinguish, and this is particularly for all those non-lawyers, that it is very important for you to distinguish that are you claiming force majeure based upon COVID-19 or are you claiming force majeure on lockdown? Please note, there is a difference between the two from a legal point of view and from claiming force majeure point of view. Lockdown is a consequence of COVID-19, right? But from a legal point of view, both of them are different. And here's how I explain to you. Now, COVID-19 began somewhere in December in China, right? January, February, it started spreading in the world. India was still not affected by January at least, but China was definitely affected. And somewhere in the month of January, China had placed restrictions on the flights and movements of the goods. Now, during this time, when I was working for one of my clients was supposed to get certain deliveries from China in India, and those deliveries were to be supplied onwards for some projects. Now, those deliveries were cancelled and he could not get deliveries on time. He was supposed to get it in the month of February. In India, there was no lockdown in the month of February, but he was not able to get them. On account of which he had to write to the other to whom he had to supply, saying that I'm not able to get the goods. So please give me more time. Now, I'm not going too much into detail as to what happened, but yeah, I mean, there was some dispute because the other party said that, I mean, you can get it from an alternative place. So at that time, there was no lockdown, but still we could claim force majeure, but only because the goods were coming from China. If the goods were coming from some other country, which was not under restriction, then it would not have been a case of force majeure. Even though it is interesting to note that WHO declared this pandemic on 11th of March. So these dates are important. They declared this pandemic on 11th of March and a public health emergency of international concern on 30th January. They had declared this outbreak. So when it was declared as a global epidemic or a pandemic, whatever you want to call it, on 11th of March, before that, on 19th of February, Ministry of Finance, Government of India, Ministry of Finance had issued an internal office memorandum declaring that for their own internal procurement and supplies, that this COVID-19 is a force majeure, and for their internal procurement and supply, they had said that suppliers should be given those times only if the goods are coming from China. And then, as all of us know, that the lockdown was announced on 24th of March, and today now it's extended till 3rd of May. So all these dates and the intervening time period is very important because before the lockdown, and fortunately, I want to use the word fortunately, that before the lockdown, because India was not affected at a large scale, it's very difficult to claim force majeure because the movement was allowed, the work was taking place, and it was not a case wherein the disease has spread so vast that people are not willing to come out of their houses. So based upon your contract, if you want to claim this, please make notes of all these dates. Now, as I mentioned, that your contract is very, very important. And every contract will have a different implications for a force majeure. Or to say it in other words, force majeure will be read differently for different contracts. For example, your rent agreement will be different even with the lease deed. Because whether it's a monthly tenancy or whether it's a yearly tenancy, your supply agreements, your construction agreements, any government contracts, employment agreements, even, for example, your investment agreement. For example, if there are some startups who have entered into an investment agreement prior to declaration of the lockdown for taking investment and the investors have committed their funds, And we typically have a clause in the investment agreement which says that the investment is subject to material adverse changes. Now one can say that this is a material adverse change. So it will depend upon contract to contract, and the implications will depend upon the language of the force majeure used in such contract. Now let's go into a little legal part. Now, force majeure and frustration, which I say doctrine of frustration, are not codified under Indian law, which means that they are not specifically defined under Indian law. And therefore, in order to use concepts of force majeure and frustration, we rely on Indian Contract Act. So you can make a note if you want. It's Indian Contract Act 1872. It's available on online. You can download the contract and you can read it for yourself. Section 32 and section 56. Now, if your contract, any contract, has a force majeure clause, if it has a force majeure clause, then broadly you will be relying on section 32 of the Indian Contract Act. And if your contract does not have a force majeure clause, then that's where the doctrine of frustration comes into play, and you'll be broadly relying under section 56. Even though people mix and match, but I'm just telling you from a broad point of view. So if your contract has a force majeure, you will rely mostly on section 32. If your contract does not have a force majeure clause, specific clause, then you will rely on doctrine of frustration 56. Now at this point, I'm not going too much detail into legal because that's more of an academic point of view, but just to give a very broad difference between force majeure and frustration. So a force majeure, as per section 32, is happening is that if your contract is a contingent contract is a contract that can be performed only upon happening of certain event. So if your contract is such a contract which is dependent upon happening or non-happening of an event, and if such an event does not occur, then that contract becomes void, which means incapable of being performed. Now this is a law. This is not force majeure. This is a law. Based upon this law, if you have a force majeure clause in your contract, under this law you can claim force majeure, obviously using your in the contract. But based upon this, you can say that there's a force majeure. There's an event which has occurred because of which I'm not able to fulfill my obligations. And if you do not have a force majeure, then you basically rely on section 56 of the contract, which is an agreement to do an act which is impossible in itself. So if you have entered into a contract today to do certain act, and after execution of the contract, if that act itself has become impossible or unlawful, then you can claim under doctrine of frustration. You can tell the other party that I want to get out of the contract. I want to exit from the contract, even if you don't have a force majeure clause. For example, demonetization when it occurred. So if there was some contract in which there was some payment to be made and it was agreed that the payment will be made in cash in a certain period of time, then you could have said to some extent. So from a legal point of view, doctrine of frustration and force majeure are different in a sense that frustration means that the obligation which you have to perform, that itself has become unfructuous, and now because of some event you cannot perform any part of the contract at all, and that's why it says frustration. The contract is frustrated, you cannot perform any part. Force majeure is that for an event, for some time period, an event which has restricted performance of the contract, and till that time you are not able to perform, and that's why you want to excuse yourself from your obligation. But from your point of view, whether it is frustration or whether it is force majeure will depend upon either language of your contract or circumstances. In either of the cases, those three things which I spoke about initially are very, very important, which I will again repeat. A, the event has occurred which has prevented you from performing your obligations. B, the event is beyond your control. C, you could not have anticipated that event in the beginning. Now, having understood all of this, let's try and see as to what is the meaning of this. I mean, why are we discussing force majeure? Why are we discussing frustration concepts? Now, as a business house, as a corporate, you would have entered into certain contracts and you would have had an obligation to perform. Now, all of you are aware that typically, if you are not able to perform any of your obligations under the contract, the other party will have a right against you for breach of the contract, in which case they can either claim indemnity or they may claim damages or they may claim any other penalties or fines because you are not able to perform your part of the contract. Now, this is that situation. Now, under force majeure is a kind of a preemptive action wherein you write to the other party before the other party gives you a notice of breach. Before that, you write to the other party informing them that, sir, I was supposed to perform certain obligations in my contract. Now, because this event has occurred and this event is beyond my reasonable control, and I'm not able to perform my obligation, so please excuse me for certain time period for performing the contract, or give me more time to perform the contract, or let's terminate the contract. It will depend upon case to case. Example, you are in the construction business and you have to construct certain, say, building by a certain time period. You were supposed to construct, say, by September 2020. Now, because of lockdown, because there's a complete restriction, you are not able to do that. So you will write to your employer or whoever is the principal contractor saying that, sir, I was supposed to complete this by September. Now there is a lockdown. Because of this lockdown, 1.5 months or whatever time period has elapsed on which I was not able to do any work. So please extend my timeline from September onwards for another 1.5 month period. Or if you are in some other contract, you may want to say that, sir, I was supposed to supply you certain goods by the month of, and they were perishable goods, by the month of, say, March or April or whatever. And because of lockdown, I'm not able to supply. So I want to avoid the contract. So your ask, what you are asking is very, very important. And when you ask, please note that your ask should be well within the time. It should not be after you have received a notice of breach. And typically in all the force majeure clauses in contract, at least the ones which I have seen, they have some kind of a mechanism and a time period that the moment force majeure has occurred, within 10 days, within 15 days, you have to send a notice. Now that's where the challenge is. And that's what I explained initially, that you have to draw a distinction between between COVID-19 as a disease and lockdown, because there is no specific date for COVID-19. If you're claiming your force majeure based upon COVID-19. So if you're claiming your force majeure based upon lockdown, then definitely you have a date, and within that date, whatever time period your contract allows, you should have sent a notice. If you have not sent a notice, you can still send that, and you can always say that because of the entire lockdown, the entire thing was jammed, the entire machinery was down. That's why I'm sending it now. But it has to be sent before you get a notice of breach in most of the cases. And as I mentioned, that what you are asking is very, very important. And why is it important? And I'm again telling you from a practical point of view, and it is very interesting that many of the force majeure clauses also have a provision in the contract that if the force majeure continues for a period of, say, 3 months or 4 months, the other party has a right to terminate the contract, which is a very fair clause. Because if you are claiming force majeure and saying that for the next 3 months, I'm not able to perform the contract, now other party may say that I don't want to keep alive this contract for beyond 3 months. There's no point. So after 3 months, the other party may say that the force majeure is still continuing. Let's terminate the contract. So if you are in a situation wherein you don't want termination of the contract, but at the same time you want to use the force majeure, so please be very careful in the language of your notice which you're sending, in such a way that you should not exceed that time period. And the moment you are nearing that time period, you should withdraw your force majeure notice if you feel you are able to perform the contract. But unfortunately, if you are not able to perform the contract, then it's just bad luck. but your ask has to be important. And once you have sent out a notice, then you should also give a regular update once 15 days or once a month based upon the language of your contract as to what is the status. Now here it is important. There is one concept which we call as a mitigating factor. It depends upon language to language. Some of the languages have, but typically from a legal point of view also, courts would expect that even if you are claiming force majeure and you are well within your right to claim force majeure, but have you taken any mitigating efforts to control the damages of the other side? Now, if you have taken those mitigation efforts, then please mention them in your notices that you have taken this mitigation efforts, in a sense that even though there is a complete lockdown, but if there is some work which could have been done online, you have done that work online. And during this time, your correspondence becomes very, very important, because later on, if it goes into dispute mode, in the sense that if the other party is disputing your force majeure notice and not willing to give you that remedy and still holding you for breach, then it's a dispute. Now, your correspondence during this time period becomes very important as to what you have claimed, under what provisions you have claimed, what mitigating factors you have taken. Now let's come to another important part of the definition of force majeure. There are two kinds of, I'm again speaking from a very broad and generic point of view. There are two kinds of definition of force majeure. One is which we call as inclusive definition. The other is what we call as an exclusive definition. Now, in generic meaning, inclusive definition would mean that whatever is defined and illustrated in the definition, it will include those items as well as other items which can be deemed into that definition. That's an inclusive definition, means the ones which are listed below and some other items which can be read into that, which I will explain to you. And then there is an exclusive definition, which means that it is only restricted to those items which are mentioned herein and nothing else. Now, in my experience, I have seen both inclusive and exclusive. Depends upon contract to contract. So please pay attention now and see what kind of language you have in your contract. If your language in the contract says that force majeure means any event, please underline this word, any event. If force majeure means any event which is beyond the reasonable control, which delays or obstruct the performance obligations, including the following events, and also underline the word including the following events, then this is an inclusive definition, which means that force, first of all, will mean any event. Obviously, those criteria have to be satisfied, that any event which is beyond the reasonable control and which has delayed the performance of the obligations, including the following events. So in this case, if 4 events are listed, which are, say, for example, war, internal disturbances, riot, and flood. In this case, you will still be able to claim force majeure because it's an inclusive definition. It says any event and including the following. So even if epidemic or act of God is not mentioned, you can still claim. But if it is an exclusive definition with only these 4 items listed, then it's difficult for you to claim force majeure. Now, what I'm saying is purely from a academic point of view, but even while saying this, I feel it's very strange that such a situation has occurred which no one could have anticipated. The entire world is under lockdown. So even if your contract does not mention act of God or epidemic, how can you not claim this as a force majeure if you are not allowed to go out? So in my view, if you have force majeure clause, then during the lockdown period, if you are affected, I feel that you can definitely claim force majeure. But yes, I mean, obviously it depends upon drafting, but from a broad point of view, I think you can claim. Now, once you have read the definition of force majeure in the manner I've just explained, and if you feel that yes, you are affected party, it was beyond your reasonable control, and you could not have anticipated it, and you have taken mitigating factors, then you have to give a written notice. Just by informing the other party verbally or by writing a vague language will not help you. you have to give a very clear, specific notice listing out the dates on which the force majeure occurred, listing out the causes, the effects, the consequences, and the measures which you have taken. And again, as I mentioned, the ask. So it has to be invoked through a written notice as per the provisions of your contract. Now, depending upon contract to contract, the clauses of the force majeure can be such that when you have sent a written notice, it may be such that your claim of force majeure is subject to other party agreeing to it. And if they don't agree, then it's a dispute. Or some of the clauses does not give the other party any right to dispute or not to dispute. You have just sent a force majeure notice. Now, if the other party still feels that what you're claiming is not a force majeure, they can obviously always reply you back. But then that's a dispute which has to be settled either before an arbitrator or by the court as per your contract. But if your language is that you have to wait for the other party to give a revert, then please note that you should do a regular follow-up with the other party and tell them that I have issued you a force majeure notice. Please revert on that. And if they still don't revert within the time period, then you have all the rights to write another follow-up letter in reference to the letter which you have written, saying that you have claimed force majeure, and as you have not received any reply, it is deemed that this is a force majeure event. Until that time, whatever your ask is in place, whether you're asking for termination or suspension or whatever you're asking for. Now, obviously, it is very obvious that this notice can only be sent by the person who is affected. So it can't be sent by somebody who's not affected. Now, again, from a contract point of view, if you have an international contract, meaning thereby that if the other party is a international party, then the jurisdiction becomes important, because if your international contract does not have India jurisdiction, then force majeure will depend upon the laws of that country. So please be very careful in that also. Now, depending upon your ask, if you are asking for extension time period in the force majeure notice, see, if you're asking for termination, then it's very important, then it's very easy. You just have to write it's just one line, right? It's termination of the contract. But if you're asking for extension, then it's very important that you explain your case in complete detail, if required with all the annexures as to how the impact has taken place and how much time period you want more. Because there may be a reason that beyond a particular time period, the contract may become frustrated, even if there is no provision for the other party to terminate. But the time period beyond which you want to perform your contract will make the contract automatically frustrated, in which case your agreement gets terminated on its own. Now, in the light of this, I will just explain I'll just talk from few examples as to what I've been doing recently, which will help you, because what has been happening is that people are sending force majeures under various contracts, and people are also trying to defend force majeures. So it will be interesting for you to note certain things. Now, again, I'm repeating that it's not possible to give any view or any opinion without looking into the document, but this is just a generic discussion which I'm just trying to give you based upon my experience. Now, like RBI has also allowed certain moratorium for the bank, has given certain liberty to banks that they can give certain interest-free period or certain moratorium to their own clients. So which means that government is also recognizing in their various departments that this thing has occurred. Now, how you ask for the relief will typically depend upon your kind of contract and what is the exact clause, what is the wordings of the contract. Now, let's take for an example your supply contract. Now, if you are a supplier, then it's I think it's very relatively easier for you to claim force majeure, because there is complete restriction of the movement. Again, if you are a supplier of essential commodities, then you may not be able to claim force majeure. For example, if you are in the business of, say, supplying of medical medicines or any medical equipments or pharmaceutical equipments, pharmaceutical products, which may be listed as an essential services, then you cannot claim force majeure. because all you have to do is to get that license or pass for your personnel or for your delivery people to move out on the roads and supply them. So you cannot claim force majeure for those products. So, but otherwise, under supply contract, yes, you can definitely claim force majeure, saying that I'm not able to supply my products, and this is my ask. Now, under employment contract, and I've been getting few queries on the employment contract as well from few of the employers. Now, I don't want to give any opinion or view here, but I really don't know whether to what extent an employers can claim force majeure. Because why do you claim force majeure? You claim force majeure that you are not able to fulfill your obligation. Now, with respect to your employee, the obligation of you or the obligation of the employer is to pay salary. Now, payment of salary is not restricted unless and until you are in a kind of a business wherein you have to go to the office and only pay salary and you don't have an online mechanism. That's a different thing, but that's only for a temporary time period. Most of them are trying to claim force majeure based upon unavailability of funds because they are saying that there is no business, so I don't have money. Now, as I explained, that force majeure itself is a very detailed and a complicated subject. So there have been various judgments. Now, it's very difficult to know whether unavailability of funds can be force majeure or cannot be. In some cases, yes, it can be force majeure because even though it's not direct, but the impact of lockdown has resulted in drop in income or no income for a certain time period, and because of it, there are no cash flows. So there is no money to pay. But if there are some cash reserves, then I don't know. One can say that no, there is not a force majeure. Now your rent deed. Now typically between a landlord and a tenant, who is the one who has to send a force majeure? It's very interesting. I've been getting queries from the tenants. I've been getting queries from the landlords also. Now tenants are saying that I am not able to use my premises for a period of 2 months. Now the interesting point here is that it is not a monthly tenancy. There are monthly tenancies also, which is month to month. Typically in case of what we have, say, co-spaces, which is a monthly license. At times they have a monthly license. It's a month on month. But in case of a usual rent or a lease deed, which is a yearly lease deed, just because a tenant is not able to occupy the space for 2 months, how is he to claim force majeure? His obligation is only to pay the rent. On the contrary, it is the landlord who has to ensure that the premises are available to the tenant. So landlord is the one who can always tell the tenant that yes, it is my duty to make available the premises to you, but unfortunately because of lockdown I'm not able to give you the premises. But because you already hold the premises with you, there is nothing which I can also do. So at the maximum, maybe tenant can claim, say that because I have not used the premises, you please excuse my rent waiver because I have not used it, and this is a situation which nobody could have anticipated, and that's not in the contract. But if you see the impact is that, I mean, if you see logically, right? Let's forget the legal discussion. Logically, if you see, in my view, a tenant is not able to use the premises for 2 months or 3 months. If he is not able to use the premises for 3 months, then he should also earn waiver by the landlord. Yes, it's a different question. Somebody has to take a hit. Now, who that somebody is, it's like anybody's. It can be interpreted by anyone. It's a very subjective discussion. So under lease deeds and rent deeds, it's little subjective to claim force majeure. Under supply contract, yes, you can. Under employment contracts, I feel it is little difficult. Under construction contracts, you can claim force majeure, but only for a limited time. And that too, if you are claiming it before lockdown, you can claim it only if your goods were coming from China. After the lockdown, yes, definitely you can claim force majeure. But please note, the moment lockdown is over, currently if we go, and let's keep our fingers crossed, if the situation is under control, and if the lockdown is no longer extended beyond 3rd of May, what our honorable PM said today, then after that, it will be very difficult for people in construction business to claim force majeure. Even if your workers are not willing to come, even if, because we understand that all these migration things have happened, right? And this is again, I've got a query from few of the clients. Because all these migration things have started, the workers have gone. So there have been some issues with construction companies wherein they don't have labor, they don't have workforce. So my advice to them is that during this time period, please do something. I mean, you can sit at home and make calls, right? You can do something to get your labor back, to get your workforce back, because the moment this lockdown exists, lockdown ceases, your force majeure time period ceases. So you will not be able to get benefit of that unless and until actually able to prove that even after lockdown, there was no worker who was willing to work. So for construction contract, it's still the time period. Then contract for essential services is something which is obviously you are not, it's very difficult for you to claim force majeure. So these are few of the contracts which I have mentioned. Now there can be 100 contracts. It's not difficult. I mean, it's very difficult in such a short period to explain every contract. But again, as I said, that your language is very, very important. And irrespective of any contract, those three criteria have to be satisfied. And at the end, I will again repeat those three criteria for everyone's benefit in case if somebody may have joined a little late. Those three criteria for you to claim force majeure are: A, that you are prevented from performing your obligations directly. B, that event which has prevented you from performing your obligation is beyond your control. And C, that event which has prevented you from performing your obligation and which was beyond your control was something which you could have never anticipated when you executed the contract. Which is obviously that this thing is obvious because nobody could have anticipated this COVID-19 situation. But yes, again, after February or March, if you have entered into any contract, then that may be debatable because by January, February, it was a global news. And after February, as I mentioned, that somewhere in February, there was a memorandum issued by Ministry of Finance also claiming force majeure for their internal procurement and supplies. So after that, if you have entered into any contract and then you say that no, I mean, I was not aware this lockdown is going to happen, then it may be difficult. So with this, I kind of want to sum up, want to conclude my talk here. And Satyam, if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're
yeah, thank you, Madhu. We have a lot of questions coming in, and they were related. Majority of them were related to the rental and the employee agreements, which we've already discussed. And I also believe that such questions can be answered when you can go through the contract and have a better understanding, because more of the questions are a case to like they've described their cases and they want a legal opinion on it. So I would suggest that we connect you with the prospect, with the attendees that have shared the questions, so that you can schedule a call or probably have a session with them where you can guide them in a much better way.
Okay, so you are saying that I just want to. So you are saying that most of the questions are with respect to employment and rental, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what and. So we've received.
So you are suggesting that we will not. So then you are suggesting that we will not have question answer session right now, right?
No, I'm taking a few.
So you're taking a few. Okay.
Yeah. So there's just one that has come in. There was an office memorandum issued by the Department of Expenditure, which essentially declared COVID-19 as a natural calamity, and thus, therefore, it's a force majeure. Can an affected party, if not a government entity, cite this to back up its claim for FM in a contract between two parties?
Okay, so basically, as I explained, that memorandum was strictly for supplies to be which were coming from China. So if any government department is using that with a local manufacturer wherein there is no China connect, then it's very difficult to claim force majeure. But as I explained, that because this was something which nobody could have anticipated. So I would definitely say that one definitely has some right to send a force majeure notice. It's not something that you are completely shooting in the dark, but it's very difficult for based upon that memorandum to use it in a generic way. That memorandum is specifically meant only for certain, and that memorandum is only for their internal procurement and supplies.
Okay. So another question that is that there's one of our attendees, he's mentioning that he had a payment that was overdue for about 6 months, and now when he is following up with the client has invoked a force majeure. Is that applicable?
Okay, so that's interesting. So actually, for example, now this was another example which I should have given. This is interesting. This happened in one of my case also. That, for example, there was a supplier who had to supply certain products to a customer within the month of. So at means that you have supply agreements in which you apply some heavy equipments, wherein there is no specific date mentioned. It's a month mentioned. So in this case, it was mentioned that he had to supply in the month of March, right? Now he went ahead and for his own reason, this guy thought that I will supply it in the last week of March, and immediately he could not anticipate the lockdown was announced. So the reply which he is getting from the other side is that, boss, you had the first 20 days also, you could have supplied in that time also. So in this case, if the payment is pending for 6 months, then there is absolutely, in view, there is no way that this guy can claim force majeure. Whoever has received this notice of force majeure should reply back saying that this payment is pending for the last 6 months when there was no lockdown and there was no force majeure. So he has to make the payment. And as I meant, payment is not force majeure. Unavailability of funds is not force majeure. This is not a monetization issue. It's a restriction of movement. You can still make online payments.
So that's what he's just adding on, that he had fulfilled all the obligations from his end about 6 months ago. So I don't think so. There's a clause that the force measure can be evoked by the other party.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So these were a few questions that we had, and now a lot of people are mentioning that since there was so much information in the session, and it kind of becomes very difficult to retain it, if there can be a document that can be shared from your end with just certain details, certain key points that you covered, so that they can actually have a look at it. Otherwise, some specific queries that we have, we'll email it to you and we'll share the details so that you can get in touch with that.
Yeah, to be very honest with you, Satyam, I mean, I have not prepared any particular. There was no. I mean, if I had a document, I would have absolutely shared it. Obviously, I mean, I had made few points. It was not something that I was not prepared. I had made few points. So if you want, okay, so we can talk offline on this. We can talk offline on this as to how to take it forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madhavan. It was a really good session. People found it very useful, and we, as a token of appreciation, this is a small certificate that we have. Thank you so much for taking your time for us and putting all this information together. I'm sure the audience have loved the content and they would be reaching out to you with a lot of questions.
Sure. And just on a lighter note, my sincere apologies for not coming on video because the pic which you are showing is completely contrary to my current position here. So I'm not shaven. So that's the reason why I'm not on video.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Satyam. Thanks.
And
bye.
Thank you, Sahil, for helping us put this session together. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Sahil. Bye.